Hello everyone, this is pklplus Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a recap and review of week 4 of the Johnny Depp vs Amber Heard trial. This is covering all testimonies and statements of the week Monday the 2nd of May through to Friday the 6th of May 2022. Now you can catch up with my previous coverage of the previous weeks of the trial from week 1 to week 3 within the channel, and I'll leave some links within the description. So we'll get straight into it then and go on to week 4, which without question was the most significant, eventful and anticipated week within all of the trial itself. It was far more fascinating with many talking points and incidents throughout. So we start off then with day 12, where we had continued the list of Johnny Depp's witnesses, and first off was Travis McGivern, who was a security professional, and to be honest, he just confirmed the same as what many other personal witnesses previously throughout the trial, that he heard the couple fighting, that he was paid by Johnny for his services, and that he didn't witness any bruises or marks on Amber. So in my opinion, there was nothing really new of any value that was added within this testimony. Next up was Jack Wingham, who was Johnny Depp's talent manager, who had worked closely with him for a number of years, and he talked about the various film projects that Johnny was in consideration for pre-2008 and the op-ed article, and confirmed the potential earnings for each of these roles that Johnny would have obtained if he was successful in attaining them. He stated that the op-ed article was very damaging to Johnny's career, which of course is the whole relevance to this overall case. He also confirmed that Johnny didn't perform any roles from December 2018 on to the present day. Again, this ties very much to the article and whether it had significant impact on Johnny's career. So for me, this is far more value in terms of the overall testimony. We then heard from Richard Edward Marks, who worked for a transactional entertainment law firm, and he negotiates the deals for actors to get their film roles. And he gave a very admittedly lengthy, perhaps too long prologue, if you like, of his career, talking about all the famous films and actors that he worked with. So he name dropped the likes of Sylvester Stallone, being involved in his role with the first Rocky film, Eddie Murphy in terms of Beverly Hills Cop. And whilst this was very interesting, and I understand that they were trying to build his credibility as a witness, but very much like Dr. Shannon Curry, it almost felt like he was promoting himself rather than being a witness for this trial. Now, we had the break after the first segment of his testimony, and when we came back, his statements became far more relevant when he talked about the entity of a movie star and how any negativity towards the movie star is seen as very hurtful by studios, and how it can affect the potential box office and profits. Now, we all know this is 100% true. We know how conscious studios are in terms of a movie star's image, how they won't hesitate to let that actor go if they feel that their reputation can tarnish their project in any way. We all know cancel culture exists, so this made complete sense. And Richard also stated that the Washington Post is connected to Hollywood, which again backs up the fact that the studio would have paid extreme attention to the op-ed article itself, which again backs up the claims of it being defamatory towards Johnny's career. And he also spoke again about how badly Amber's claims did affect Johnny's reputation. So this last part of his testimony again was very relevant to the overall case. Next up, we had Douglas Benaya, who was a social media analyst, and he talked about the Google internet search results for Johnny Depp during 2016 when the first allegations were made by Amber. And then he talked about the search results of around 2018 when the op-ed article was released. And he stated that there was a decrease in the search results around the allegations that were provided, and he also gave us certain line graphs to show the highs and lows of the search results during all of the time around the allegations being made. Now, to be honest, these line graphs weren't very clear when watching them online, but again, it's very good that we are providing far more statistical data and factual knowledge to support whether the op-ed article had any effect on Johnny's career. And Douglas continued by introducing the concept of a Q-score, which measures how liked or disliked a celebrity is, and he stated again that the score was a lot higher pre-2016 than what it was 2016 to 2018. Now, unfortunately, Douglas's statistics and case were very much shot down because they asked if it was possible to isolate the figures to show an effect of the op-ed article post-2018. Again, to prove whether the article was defamatory and had an effect on Johnny's career. And Douglas replied that he wasn't asked to do the research to cover that period. So Amber's team argues that it wasn't as relevant to the overall case, Plus, they also stated that they couldn't prove who was searching the results at these stages. It could have been a man, it could have been a woman, it could have been one of my cats, I believe one of Amber's lawyers stated. And to be fair, Amber's team definitely had a point here. Also, the fact that just because somebody isn't being searched on the internet, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's any negativity surrounding them. It could just mean that they're not relevant at the time, or they're not prolific in terms of providing any content. So this is one of the witnesses that didn't do a good job in terms of Johnny's case. We then concluded Johnny's side of the trial with his last witness, nurse Erin Filati, who once again confirmed very similar beats as what the rest of his witnesses did. She viewed over several photos and confirmed again with her interactions with Johnny and Amber, confirming once more that she saw no signs of abuse or physical damage incurred by Amber herself. So this was a testimony that was probably longer than what it should have been. Again, it didn't really add anything more as to what we heard already previously. So after concluding her testimony in the earlier part of day 13, we then came on to one of the biggest incidents of the trial, and that was the proposal of Amber's team to dismiss and strike the case. Now, if you had been following the commentary around this was very much anticipated. It was released in the news a couple of days before the team put this motion into action, and the reason they moved to strike the case is because it was on the basis that they felt that Depp's team hadn't provided sufficient evidence in order to justify continuing the case. Now, Depp's team countered this, rightly in my opinion, and pointed out that all of the evidence that they had collated together hadn't been completed yet, as they hadn't questioned Amber, whose testimony 100% would have been used as part of their evidence. So how can their case be completed if they've yet to question Amber and collate all of their evidence? Now, the judge agreed on this basis and also confirmed the reason for Depp's team not questioning Amber was due to the pre-agreement that was set before this trial had been started, in the fact that both individuals would carry out their testimonies separately. So Johnny would present his case first alongside his witnesses and face questioning, and then Amber would do the same when it was her turn to provide her overall defence. And I suppose the reason for this is that it allowed both individuals to have far more control and dictate their overall testimonies, plus it provides more platform for them to fully get their stories across. And in one of the biggest highlights of this trial was when Johnny Depp's lawyer Ben Chew stood up in defence of continuing the case, and speaking with a very much fire and passion, he detailed how Amber was spreading lies and looking for publicity. In terms of inputting the op-ed article, he stated that if it wasn't for the op-ed article, she would be very much unknown, in that she very much intended to put the statements within the op-ed article because it would have generated a lot of attention for her, and that was one of the major reasons why she managed to get the role for Aquaman. Again, this is something that me and a lot of people agree with, and he also referred to other elements that we'd already seen throughout this trial in terms of the missed charity payments to the ACLU, as well as the incidents involving the police visiting the house during one of the domestic violence calls and finding no evidence there in terms of abuse. And Ben Chew's stand very much elicited a lot of support from Johnny Depp fans and supporters. Now, Ben Rottenborn trying to counter this claim, still emphasising that they didn't have sufficient evidence, but the judge overall threw out this claim and decided that the trial should continue. And so we moved on then. After closing out all of the testimonies for Johnny's side, we then now moved on to Amber's testimony, and this was in the afternoon of day 13. And the first witness on the stand was Dawn Hughes, who was a psychologist who had worked very closely with Amber, and very much like Dr. Shannon Curry, Diane started off her testimony by listing off all of her credentials, again to back up her credibility as the expert in this field. And after that, she then started to talk about the issues of domestic violence and all of the trauma that women victims went through. And we do know that generally, statistically, more women do suffer from domestic violence than what men do, or indeed there are more reported cases made by women than what they are by men. But she did anger a lot of people that were watching this trial because she kept constantly referring to females suffering. It was the women that were suffering from the violence. It was the women that were suffering from the trauma. It was the women who were the ones that were trying to make the relationships work, and they would never leave their partner and always persist with the relationship amidst all the violence because they felt they could change it and they were in love with their partners. Now again, this is very true, but at the same time, she barely referred to the fact that men could also suffer the same incidences as what women did. And to be fair, they did ask her whether men suffer from abuse, and she did state that yes, they did as well. But what angered a lot of viewers about this is that when she was talking about the abuse that female suffers, From everything that we've heard in the first 3 weeks of this trial, you could basically take what she said and mirror it around and apply it to what Johnny had suffered. Again, everything we take from the audio clips and the photos. So again, this backs up the fact that many people felt that Johnny was indeed the person who was abused and not Amber. Now, we did have some comedic moments when Amber's lawyer Elaine kept calling Diane Hughes Dr. Curry, and as we all know from the previous week, there was very much of a back and forth between Elaine and Shannon Curry. We had the infamous conversation about muffins, and this elicited a lot of laughter from many viewers, once again emphasising that Elaine was very much rattled during her dialogue with Shannon Curry. And it just looks very unprofessional if you call a witness to the stand and you can't even call them by their proper name. Now, that sense of unprofessionalism was emphasised even more so when Diane Hughes kept referring to her notes when giving her testimony, which is not allowed. Now, of course, we all know the reason why, because it shows that the witness is being dictated by outside sources. For all we know, what was in the notes could be certain scripts that were generated by Amber herself or Amber's lawyers team. The whole point is that Diane has come to the stand confirming herself as an expert, so we would expect an expert to fully know what she was talking about and that she wouldn't need notes in order to put across her message. Again, we go back to Shannon Curry, who didn't require any notes when she was making her testimony. Now, eventually Johnny Depp's team did object to her referring to her notes, and this was another comical moment because Elaine was almost instructing Diane Hughes that she could give her testimony, that she could use her notes to recollect, but she wasn't allowed to read them. But of course this made no sense, because if Diane was going to recollect her notes, she would have to read them, which wasn't allowed. So it was just coming across as very comical, and you could visibly see both Johnny Depp and Ben Chew laughing away at what was going on at this point. But when we finally cut more into Diane's testimony, she talked very much about her testing processes in terms of assessing Amber's condition. She stated there were many instances of Amber being punched and slapped, and she went into quite some graphic and specific details, citing sexual assault being incurred by Amber from Johnny. She stated that Johnny was very jealous and that he didn't want Amber showing any nudity within her movie roles. She stated that Johnny would on multiple times call certain actors who Amber was filming with, stating that he was constantly looking at them, and stated that Amber was scared all throughout this ordeal. She talked about how Johnny Depp was drunk on multiple occasions and referred to incidents where Johnny was ripping off Amber's dress in order to have sex, and she gave again some very graphic accounts of sexual assault. She also talked about Amber's psychological status and that she had various issues in terms of her weight. She also stated that Amber did suffer from post-traumatic disorder. This very much conflicted with Dr. Shannon Curry's assessment, in that she felt that Amber was at least 98% exaggerating that she suffered from any personality disorder. So this is very much the interesting part of the trial now, because now every time we get a testimony from Amber's side, we can now compare it to what we've heard already. So it will either provide much more nuance and confirmation, or perhaps far more confusion. We then move on to day 14 and the cross-examination of Diane Hughes, and I think a lot of viewers were expecting lots of fireworks because they felt that Depp's team would press very much on the fact that she was using notes, and also highlight the fact that for all of her statements there was no medical records or evidence to back up these claims. But to be honest, the cross-examination was very much tame and disappointing, and I think at this stage, to be honest, we were all just waiting for Amber to take the stand and make her own testimony. And then we came to at last the moment that I think everybody was waiting for after Johnny Depp had made his own testimony, and that was Amber taking to the stand. And just like Johnny, she was given full range to talk about her overall experiences and her early life. So we began the testimony when she was talking about her early career and her early roles, the various jobs that she did prior to starting her movie career, and to be fair, at this stage she did come across as rather genuine. She talked about her early auditions for the Rum Diary film. This was of course where she first met Johnny on. She talked about meeting Johnny and her family for the first time, and this was general foundation for the witness, again, which is fair. So at this stage there was no problems with her testimony. One thing that was very noticeable was her change in her appearance. So if you go by the previous 3 weeks, you notice that Amber was dressed up very sharp, wore lots of makeup, but here when she appeared on the stand, she very much stripped back her makeup and her hairstyle was far more flayed in a way, and she wanted to present far more of this frail and very vulnerable personality that took to the stand. She then started to talk about the various incidents involving her and Johnny, and from her perception, the various abuse that she had to put up with. She talked about how she was constantly called a worthless whore and that Johnny very much demeaned her as she was trying to build up her career. She stated that there were multiple times when Johnny threw a glass at her. She stated another time when there were first signs of the abuse when she made some joke and reference to his tattoos, and then all of a sudden Johnny slapped at her. She thought this was a joke to begin with, but then Johnny continually slapped her. She spoke about how many times Johnny was very aggressive to her, constantly accusing her of having affairs with co-stars such as James Franco. And once again, she went into some very graphic and quite disturbing stories involving how Johnny again was ripping off all of her clothes and having aggressive sex with her, using various objects such as a bottle. She talked about multiple arguments on a plane when Johnny was kicking at the back of her whilst there were other security staff watching. She mentioned another incident where there was an argument within a pool table at a certain bar, and also another intense argument that involved a lot of painting being thrown and an argument surrounding their art room. So at first, she started off her testimony very well, but she gradually got more dramatic and, dare I say, more theatrical as she was outlining all of these incidents. And watching all of the coverage, there were a lot of viewers who were very skeptical, primarily because of her manner and the fact that she was offering to cry, but you visibly couldn't see any tears. Another indication was the fact that she was very much talking to the jury. Now, you could perceive this in different ways, but for me, if you are trying to talk to the jury, it means that you're trying to influence them and you're very much putting on more of a performance. And when we look at all of the incidents that Amber went through, in my personal opinion, if somebody went through all of those very traumatic experiences, I would expect someone to be very shy and very introverted at the thought of having to recount all of those horrific events. I see somebody struggling to look at anybody, let alone the trial, in order to try and tell them what happened. We know many cases of people who have suffered domestic abuse or any type of abuse to the point where they're so scared they don't even want to be in the same room as the person who abused them. So this is why a lot of people were very skeptical so far of Amber's testimony, and there seemed to be no consistency in terms of what she was saying. It seemed to be all of these random events all over the place. There was no real through line or consistency that we could really grab hold of, and I actually feel she may have even hurt her case to an extent by giving all of these multiple incidents. I think it may have benefited her if she just stuck to 2 or 3 incidents and just gave far more of a concise breakdown. Therefore, the jury and other viewers would have been able to fully digest at what she was saying. For all of the incidents that Amber described where she incurred multiple slaps and punches and hits, she referred to another incident when she was pulled all over the floor and that certain hair was being pulled from her scalp. She later on showing a lot of photos. Again, people were very skeptical because they felt they couldn't see a lot of damage around her broken nose supposedly, and also her busted lip. Another issue that people were bringing up was the fact that a lot of these photos were taken from her phone and that there was no metadata to support when these photos were taken. So we could argue that these photos could have been taken last week, maybe a couple of days ago, and it could have been very much doctored. That's the issue you have when you don't provide metadata for the photos that you take. Into all of the statements that Amber made is that somebody going through all of these incidents would have without question required some sort of medical attention and care for all of the injuries that are sustained. And once a medical examiner or a doctor or a nurse would have taken in Amber and assessed all of their injuries, they without question would have given some sort of indication of physical or sexual assault, and as a doctor they would have had to report these findings to the police because it's all about a duty of care. If he didn't report these findings, it would be a case of negligence. So we surely would have had some sort of medical records to back up Amber's claims, not only from the medical profession but also from the police as well. Now, to be fair here, we may have further witnesses from the medical profession who may come forward and back up Amber's claims, but at the same time, if that was the case, I would have expected these witnesses to come forward first, just like we had with Johnny's testimony, where we had various statements being made from nurses, doctors and security personnel before Johnny took the stand himself. So that's what I would expect to see in the next upcoming weeks in terms of witnesses being able to back up what Amber is saying in order to give validity. Now, if we do have that case, then it will bolster Amber's argument tenfold. But if we have nobody coming forward to support these claims, then it's going to make Amber look very bad and confirm for a lot of people that they feel that she's lying and making this whole thing up. And with all of the existing discrepancies surrounding the failed charity payments And all of the various audio clips that we've heard already very much suggesting that it was Amber who was the aggressor and not Johnny. If she doesn't have anybody to back up her claims, it's only going to make her case worse, and indeed call into question her character and integrity, and therefore have the jury very much doubting as if the op-ed article was actually true or not. So once we had a full day in day 15 of Amber giving her testimony, we then brought the trial to the close. We will now have a 10-day break before the trial resumes, giving all of us who have covered it some time to recover and just reflect on what's gone on for these previous 4 weeks. And we've already seen the action continue on social media when the PR teams of both Johnny and Amber made several posts calling each other's testimonies and legal teams into question. Now, to be honest, I don't really like that, because again, it just makes the trial itself and the whole issue become much more of a mudslinging contest rather than finding evidence or facts. But again, this is something that I've stated when covering this trial. It's very much more about public image and reputation and perception, rather than actually who's correct in terms of defamation or not. I think that's the key thing I've said from the beginning, that Johnny's ultimate goal is to put everything out there and make sure the public know that he didn't abuse Amber regardless of the verdict or not. So these posts were very much a continuation of that in the future. So that's it for now really in terms of my assessment of the week 4. As I mentioned before, we will now wait for the long break before we resume the trial yet again, and as usual when we do resume the trial, I will provide full on coverage for the 5th and 6th weeks and obviously the final verdict. If there are any spectacular incidents in terms of perhaps a settlement or a controversial incident, then I'll provide a standalone installment of that coverage as well. But that's it really in terms of my assessment of week 4 of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you are continuing to join my weekly summaries, let me know. Or if you'd like to see me provide far more daily, maybe shorter installments and coverage of this trial, then also let me know within the comments as well. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.